We are going to be looking at strategies as part of the overall organization performance, chapter 2, as well as this falls part of also marketing strategies that you could possibly look at for Mr. Price. Welcome. Let's go into it. So, just to pull some current affairs for you that you can just talk about these things in a section C. Stakeholders in the fashion supply chain. Who are our stakeholders? It includes growers of silk, cotton, and linen, textile manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and third party logistic providers, and more. I mean, you've got to also think of your factories that have got to turn the silk into materials. You then go into a factory where they've actually got to make the clothing. What are the kind of regulations that we have in South Africa? Well, it's very much led by our clothing, textile, footwear, and leather industry, which is called the CTFL. Make reference to that. They currently make up 14% of manufacturing employment in the country. It's a nice current affair. This means the sector facilitates an estimated 60 to 80,000 jobs in South Africa. A very important what do I call it? Management tool is communication. We know that, hey? From Polk. Now, have a look at this. Communications are important to reduce lead time, improve quality, and ensure timely delivery to retailers and customers. So you are going to be talking about communication if you're needing to come up with a strategy and how to improve your communications. You could possibly look at your balanced scorecard where you're looking at internal processes and how are we going to improve communication. Right, some other current affairs. Owing to technological developments that are closing the major product gaps, local textile production has evolved into a capital-intensive industry, producing synthetic fibers in ever-increasing proportions. So no longer is it natural. A lot of what we wear is synthetic. And I know I bought from Shein, and I must be honest, some of the tops that I bought feel like plastic. That's how synthetic it is. So we are definitely going that route. I'd love to know what the spin-off of that is on pollution and the footprint we are leaving for this earth. That could be quite interesting to have a look at. The South African market demand increasingly reflects the sophistication of first world markets, and the local clothing and textile industry have grown according to the full range of services, from natural and synthetic fiber production to non-wovens, spinning, weaving, tufting, knitting, dyeing, and finishing. I wanted to put that in there so that you could include something fashion orientated in terms of how they actually get product to end consumer. They've got to take all those services into account. The SA industry will always be vulnerable to cheap imports. That is a huge challenge. Mr. Price, we're going to be looking at Mr. Price now for our generic strategies, has really good market share at the moment because it is acquiring a whole lot, and I've got a nice slide and to show you what they've acquired and all the new strategies that they've put in place. Mr. Price confident that value-focused model will help it weather volatility. The group attributed its revenue performance to highly sought after merchandise. They've really got, they're quite fashionable, on trend, so people do go there. And of course, the strong value proposition. They are a cheaper retailer. And it's lovely because the fashion lasts for a year. Your clothing is going to possibly last for a year, and then it will be new fashion. So it's actually, when you compare prices to Cotton On and Truworths and Woolworths, Mr. Price is definitely a cost-effective option for the high fashion items. Okay, so what are some of the challenges that a fashion retail goes through? Global supply chain challenges, of course, with exports and import duties. Shein coming in very cheap is definitely a challenge. Rising inflation and interest rate hikes are expected to continue, placing pressure on Mr. Price. So I just quickly had a look. What is our annual consumer price inflation? Is 5.3%, which is up from December 2023. So what is inflation? Is the cost of goods. Things are going up. And I can tell you now, an average salary increase is probably between, I want to say 3 to 7%. So a lot of the time, some companies don't even give salary increases. So with goods and services going up all the time, how are you affording it? And then our interest rates, so that is when we lend money, our interest rate is sitting at 8.25%. So that is what you've got to pay back over and above what you lend. So having a look at a generic strategy, we are going to, there's three big headings under that: low cost, focus, and differentiation. So let's have a look at what Mr. Price is doing in those categories under our generic strategy. So Mr. Price follows a low-cost strategy. This is what makes them unique. They have invested, and they call it key defensive departments. So they have a defensive strategy. They are defending what they have, and they are holding certain price points while striving to preserve overall margins. By ordering large volumes in advance, economies of scale, the more you order, the lower the cost per unit. They're keeping their margins low. And what else do? They partner with suppliers that can enhance efficiencies. They are sourcing locally, and in 2014, they sourced over 65 million garments from suppliers in South Africa. And of course, what helps them from a low-cost strategy point of view is that they are a cash-based company. They do not offer credit on clothing. It's very clever, because if when you're offering credit and the interest rate is going up, people then can't afford to pay you back. You then end up having less cash available. You're not liquid, and it really does impact on your balance sheet and your ratios, your current capital ratio. So a low-cost strategy is what they do. If you're going to be looking at a focus or niche strategy, so in a typical exam, they are going to say to you, Mr. Price, what strategy are you going to be suggesting to Mr. Price based on the interest rates and everything having gone up? If you choose generic, you're going to talk about a low-cost strategy, and that's what they're doing. The second one is focus or niche. Now, niche is kind of going in small and quite focused and different. It's how does Mr. Price ensure that they are focused and niche? And they do. Constant innovation and product development, staying on the pulse of international fashion trends, and diligent resourcing. They really are focused in their approach, that they bring in the fashionable items at a very low price. And it is really kind of what's in. What's in at the moment, you're going to find at Mr. Price. And that's what makes them quite niche. Let's have a look at their history of building brands, that you can also have a look at their niche markets that they're busy looking at. So you can see there was Mr. Price, Milady's. They then acquired Sheet Street, which is linen. Mr. Price Home came on board, which was phenomenal, really changed a lot of things in the market. Mr. Price Sport, also lovely, because you've got a value chain that you don't have to spend gazillions of money with. I mean, if I just think of my kids with hockey, they want to play hockey, we go to Mr. Price Sport, we go buy them a hockey stick. And if they're then wanting to go into more professional and they're wanting to hone in on it, I would then look at more expensive, but for the time being, absolutely fine. Mr. Price Money, they then are looking, they've bought in a Mr. Price Cellular, where they sell cell phones, and then a Mr. Price Mobile and Cellular. Look at them, they've acquired Yuppie Chef, and it is doing really well, Studio 88. And they just keep building brands. They are up 17.5% on sales over the entire acquisition. So the last one that we're going to be looking at is differentiation under your generic strategies. And this is, how are you different to your competitors. And again, Mr. Price is different because they remain a cash-driven retailer. The company does not plan for credit sales to exceed 25% of group sales. They just will not go over that. This differentiates the retailer from its main competitors, and it's hugely advantageous when interest rates are rising. What else makes them different? They offer fashion, they offer homeware, cellular, sportwear, all in one convenient place. So possibly a differentiation strategy could be for Mr. Price is if they're looking at going into beauty. Maybe they bring in a new face wash, creams for teens that's going to help them with their skincare regime. They could possibly, from a differentiation point of view, have a look at come into Mr. Price and get your nails done. Come into Mr. Price and get a massage. Come into Mr. Price and we can offer haircuts that are all on trend, that are all fashionable, that are all going to be really, really spunky funky. So, yeah, that could possibly be a differentiation strategy for Mr. Price. Right. Grade 11s, grade 12s, I hope that that has helped you. The next session is going to be on our corporate strategies, and I'm going to take you through what kind of corporate strategies the fashion retail have done. Have a wonderful day. Keep well.